delighted to welcome Joseph Masembe, who hails from Uganda. He's the CEO and founder of Little Hands Go Green, as well as the Regional Director of Climate Change Advocacy East Africa. Joseph, or Joe, depending on how much trouble he's in with his mom, is a passionate advocate for our children's future, launching Little Hands Go Green in 2012 as a civil society organization. Its goal is to nurture and empower children as the main drivers of environmental conservation education in schools, homes, and communities. He brings worldwide view to this conversation, so we're glad to have him on board today. Welcome, Joseph.
Well, good morning from this end. It's good to be on the shit show. Feels like a little bit like shit, but yeah, it's all right. Glad to be here in company of all you distinguished gentlemen and the lady.
It's good to have you, Joseph. So I met Joseph on a Saturday night group that I'm part of, which is called the Climate Crisis Club. And he always really, really impresses me with the way he speaks. So, yeah, just give us a bit more background on you, maybe before you became an environmentalist.
Well, what can I say? Joseph Masembe is my name. And even before I became an environmentalist, I've always been passionate about children and their well-being. I think the child in me is still hiding somewhere in there. But I'm a lawyer. I'm a trained lawyer by profession. I haven't practiced. I read law at Kingston University in London. I've done marketing. And I think one of the things why I actually switched into environmental conservation was because as a marketeer, I have seen all these campaigns that everybody does worldwide. Everybody wants to plant trees. Everyone wants to do reforestation and the like. But how can I put it? We do it sometimes for the cameras. Sometimes we do it without passion. We do it because it ticks certain boxes. So when I woke up one day, I looked at how the world was going and what stake those that we call children, the ones who will own the future when we are long gone. And I thought, what stake do they have in helping to create the kind of future that they will inherit? So I thought, without doing it the political way or the marketing way, let's try and see if we can get every child. And at the time I was in Uganda after having done my law degree, and there was an economic crisis all over the world, Europe, the Americas, 2008, 2009, 2010. So when everything was not so clear, I was looking for a direction. I came and started doing a couple of marketing projects, a bit of business consultancy in Uganda, in Kenya, moving up and down, trying to find my edge. And then in one of those sojourns, I discovered something called fun and entertainment for children. Everybody was doing a brilliant show somewhere, Lionel Richie somewhere, I don't know, a concert in Brazil. And there was, I think, a concert I watched one time. I think I watched it on TV, Hyde Park. It was for Nelson Mandela. And it had all these artists that came to celebrate, I think, his 90th birthday somewhere. So I thought to myself, but I haven't seen one of these for the children. So initially, my goal was not to become an environmentalist. It was to sort of create a Disney-like feel for children in Africa. So it was something called My Kid is a Superstar, where everybody can recognize the talent and the innocence and the good in children. But when we gathered all these children in 2011, there was about 10,000 of them, to play on bouncing castles and jump on whatever they call them, rides and trampolines. I thought to myself, we can do more with these children. So I said, why don't we create a project to enable every child to go home and plant at least just one fruit tree? And the logic was very simple. I mean, if I plant a fruit tree, I will get vitamins from the fruits. I will get better health effects. I will also get excited watching a tree bear fruit, because I remember growing up getting excited watching a bean germinate in a science project. So we started this little thing with a couple of volunteers, say the Little Hands Go Green, and it started like a little joke. And they wrote an article in the newspaper. It was on the 2nd of April, 2012 in the Monitor newspaper, and it said our little hands go green. And I sat with this reporter who I just told this dream scenario of mine. If every child plants a tree, there's about 20 million children in Uganda at the time, would have 20 million trees easy, which will have contributed to the green footprint. So it sounded like an exciting thing. Now, interestingly so, and it's even weird that a few days ago I met this gentleman who in 2012 read the article, and he traveled all the way from the West Nile region of Uganda. He asked for my number from the reporters. They got to me. He came and we had a coffee, and he told me, my name is John Orach from the Elderly Members Association, Akopa in Yumbe district. It's in West Nile in Uganda. And he said to me that I am here to request you on behalf of my community to please give us tree seedlings. Now, in my mind, I was trying to remember if the article mentioned that I was a custodian of all these trees or the head of the National Forestry Authority or whatever it was, but it didn't. And he had a declaration signed by 25 families promising that they will protect these trees. And in his argument, he said, if you give us, our area is rich in growing mangoes and avocado, but we grow them in silos. So if we can plant as a community and harvest as a community, then we'll get better finances from our yields. Then he also asked me for avocado seedlings because he didn't want their children and grandchildren to grow up malnourished. And then the third one was acacia tree seedlings because he said the area was very rich in beekeeping, which it is. The tree species is good for beekeeping. Anyway, long story short, I promised the gentleman to go and visit him and see the place. And 2-3 days later, I found myself in a car headed towards the West Nile, which is over 600 kilometers away. But what transformed me into an environmentalist was the reception that I got. Now, I am as simple as they come. Half the times I am in jeans and a t-shirt. I wore this coat purposely for this one. I wear it for interviews. But he ushered me into a room where the entire district leadership was waiting. And these kind of speeches that they make say, we'll invite Joe, to invite Peter, to invite John, to invite Jen, to eventually invite our guest. So I thought to myself, come on, I am not that. But it showed me the belief in the simple idea of getting a child to plant and own a tree. So what I thought was something very small was being received with a lot of magnitude and belief. So as the story unfolded, we launched, we planted trees. I bumped into him 2 days ago accidentally. He must be like now 85 years old. And he told me that the trees have grown. They have eaten mangoes, they have eaten guavas, they are tired of the fruits, they're enjoying them. But that was the transformation into what became Little Hands Go Green. And when we started off then, we went knocking on doors of schools saying, listen, can we plant a symbolic tree in your school? And they say, yeah, come on. Can we plant a symbolic tree? As the years grew by, they said, the tree you planted grew, but can we now have 7 trees each for the primary 1, primary 2, up to primary 7? Then others started, we have a little bit more space. Can we plant a mini orchard? And the excitement grew, and it grew, and it grew. And for me, it is, I met at the time, there was a gentleman who I think was the head of the National Forestry Authority. And he told me, why don't you find some big piece of land and then you plant one big forest? And I told him, I'm not interested in planting a forest because there are so many other forests. I want mindset change. Let us try and create little forests in little minds in so many different compounds and communities, because that is when we'll have a springhold of a unifying effect of a greener footprint and cover. But then it's not just planting, it's putting a tree in the ground in my compound, and I am busy throughout the day and the night. And then after a few years, I am eating fruit from that very tree. And that is in one home, in one school, in one community. And that has been the journey. It's amazing what it has been able to achieve. We're in Rwanda, we did the same. We tried to do it in Kenya. Tanzania, all over the place, even try to do it in America, in Germany, wherever we walk, we have the disciples or the ambassadors who go and preach that green gospel and try and replicate it across the board. So in a nutshell, that is myself, the Little Hands Go Green philosophy, and our vision and the mission is very simple. Can we get children to be in charge of the future they will inherit? Can they be the custodians of their tomorrow? The ancient Americans have a saying that we do not inherit this land or from our from ancestors. We simply borrow it from our children. Because as soon as you work so hard, you get a mortgage, you get a house, and then boom, you go 6 foot under, and then your son takes over. And then he takes care of that, and then boom, he goes 6 feet under, and his son takes over. So it is not really ours. It's not from our ancestors. It is, we are just being custodians of it for our children. So let's help to raise a generation of children that will become more responsible citizens in the face of the climate crisis, which is crazy right now. And I know we live in a world where we have so many people who deny the climate crisis. They have lots of figures and thoughts about it, which is okay. It is their prerogative. But I say, let's move away from the science of denial. Let's move away from the science of acceptability and go to a basic humanity. Basic humanity. We're human beings. What would you rather have? Floods and droughts or a green place? Would you rather have people dying of malnutrition, disease, waste, or would you rather have them live happy, healthy, and breathing better air? So for me, the rationale is not about the science. It's not about what we believe. It is just about what is right. I'm a Christian, and in Genesis, God, in his infinite wisdom, woke up one day and thought, God, it's lonely out here. And he looked at himself up there, sipping on his coffee and everything. And, he was lonely. So he decided to create the earth. And he actually took his time. He put 5 whole days in putting together the rivers, the seas, the mountains, the beauty of that. And he looked and said, yeah, I've done a good job. Then he said, something is lacking. Something is lacking. So he thought to himself, who can help drive dominion over this, pamper this, nurture it, and replenish it? So he created man in just one day. And man goes on and destroys what God spent 5 whole days putting together. He destroys in just one day. Flick of a finger, dump of rubbish, etc. So that is the Christian side of it. In Islam, for the Muslims, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, says in one of his many hadiths that if you are about to draw your last breath and you're holding a tree sapling in your hand, gather all your strength and first put it in the ground, then you can go. He also goes on to say that when man dies, everything he has done in life vanishes, except 3 things. And the first one, which is the most important one, is called Sadaqatul Jaliyah, which refers to those ceaseless acts of charity that you have done that can stay on long after you've gone, like putting up a well, because people will always get water from that well even when you're long gone. Or planting a tree, because people will always either stand in a shed under the tree or actually eat fruit from that tree or even make pencils from that tree or chairs. So whether it is religion, whether it is humanity, whether it is our faith, we are called upon to take better care of our environment, and that in essence is the Little Hands Go Green story belief, vision, and mission.
Nice.
I will take a gentle pause because I need a coffee.
I love
No,
it. It's
yeah,
a
it's
fabulous
beautiful.
story. Yeah, and yeah, what you're describing sits very, very close to me. You know, to me, it's actually something even bigger than a religious aspiration. It's got to do with an overarching moral sense of responsibility. There is some kind of moral compass that the vast, vast, vast majority of us all possess. There are actually frighteningly few people who don't, thank God. That regardless of what your other views are, there is an inner sense of what is actually the right thing to do for the vast, vast majority.
Yeah. So I was just going to continue with the Little Hands Go Green, just to sort of talk more about the organization, because you've planted nearly 900,000 trees through this organization, right? That's just phenomenal. I'm going to share a little bit more about, the day-to-day, I suppose.
So what Little Ones Go Green has managed to do is to understand the ecosystem of a child. A child lives in a home with either mommy, daddy, there's an auntie, maybe an uncle, a sibling, big brother. Then they go to a school where they have teachers, caretakers, and the rest. Then they probably go to a church where they have a pastor or a reverend or a priest and a sister and a nun, whatever it is. Those that go to the Muslim have an imam, EDC to the mosque, that kind of thing. So what we have tried to do is to preach this green gospel and impart it to the children. So when we do these green festivals, which we do annually, we make sure every child can take home one fruit tree. That's the first one. So they go and plant it. Then sometimes we find that they are anecdotal days, or like Day of the African Child or World Environment Day. And then we say, okay, it is going to be, if we are in Rwanda, let us go to Kigali and find a place with a school in Chibagabaga, and then we plant 300 fruit trees. And we lobby for people. We don't have these trees. We have a few nurseries, yes, but people give us these trees. We go and say, listen, we need some trees. Can we go and do this? I tell a very good story about the sense of purpose and God's divine nature in this. And I give an example of the year 2015. In 2015, I went to the Seedling Center of the National Forestry Authority and had a document saying they should give me seedlings. And the range master there said, I can only give you 6,000 lemon seedlings. And I started arguing. I said, listen, this is an annual event. You are partners. You can't give me only lemons. I need mangoes. I need avocado. I need a variety. What are the children going to do with lemons, honestly? I mean, lemons. So I made a spirited case, but the man said, there is nothing I can do. That is all I have. So I reluctantly picked up these 6,000 seedlings, took them to the Green Festival in Kololo, and gave them out. And they disappeared. And I forgot about that in my mind, unfortunate episode. Now, 5 years later, in March 2020, the world got shut down by COVID. And one of the only key miraculous things that managed to get us through COVID were lemons. Because I don't know how it was that way, but everywhere I was saying, you take a little bit of ginger and lemon and garlic, and ginger, lemon, garlic, lemon. Then people started saying, thank you so much. Oh my God, the lemon tree. Oh my God, oh my God. Then I said, oh my God. It actually makes it like God in his infinite wisdom knew that 5 years later there's going to be a pandemic. Better get people to start planting lemons. And we survived on that. There are schools you walk to, or sometimes you meet a child and they hug you, and then you ask, so do I? They say, no, like you gave me a tree and then I planted. Then when I was 8 years, I planted 8 other trees. And so before you know it, you have little pockets of people that over the past 12 years have made it their mission to plant and own a fruit tree. And for us, we don't do eucalyptus. We don't do all these funny other trees. It has to be a fruit tree. Where it is not a fruit tree, maybe a medicinal, but mostly fruit trees. And just to show why the movement has grown and we have managed to plant those trees is because a wise Englishman once told us that all work without play makes Jack a dull boy. So we say the approach to conservation is going to be blend fun and entertainment into conservation. So when children come to a green festival, they know, oh, we are going to jump on the bouncing castles, we are going to have fun, we are going to model, we're going to sing, we're going to dance, but we must be green. We must play, take care of the environment. If you see in my background here, I threw this on my wall because some children have little pledge cards. So many that when you go to a school, they put them and say, I promise I will never litter. I promise I will never do this. So it started from planting trees to lobbying companies and organizations, like there's one called Harris International, to give us barrels that we turn into litter bins. So then we now distribute litter bins to schools to show them by example that, first of all, let's start by putting all our litter in the bins. Then later on, we now start, if you have enough bins, let us now separate our litter. What can be composite, that can go back into the ground because it produces manure. And then the plastics go here, and then the other rubbish goes here, and then the recyclables go here. But it is a carefully crafted conversation with children, by children, driven by children. So we have so many, almost over 1 million green ambassadors scattered across East Africa, Uganda, Rwanda. And to be a green ambassador, you just need to pledge. I pledge, I will take care of my environment. I swear I will not litter, I'll plant trees, I will not let anybody destroy the grass, in their own childhood way. And that's it. And then they go. And then they carry on. And I will take a vocal pause.
No, sorry,
I was just observing for everyone who's used to this show taking its usual course that we've gone in about 20, 23 minutes into it. And we're in danger of sounding very positive. We usually get into stuff which is it's all coming up a bit later on in the show, but so far this has been very, very much a story of ultimate positivity.
I can throw spanners into this.
When it comes to activists as well, it sounds like such a healthier way to approach things, and it's a lighter touch really in terms of just doing the thing, right? It's not the whole story. You're not trying to get people to swallow the whole story. You're just saying let's get involved with the smaller activity first. Let's do something small, symbolic, that's meaningful, and it's amazing to watch.
Yeah,
I mean, Joe, I know, Joe, you've said something of we sound too positive, but the reality of the situation is this. If we are now on the shit show, if you got a call right now or a message that just came in and said, there's something wrong with your son at school, immediately you just get off the show and you run and go deal with that. If it is something to do with your 25-year-old son or 32-year-old son, you'll ask, let me get back to you in 20 minutes. Let me just finish the show, then I come. Because you believe that's an adult. So, you can get to that. But when people mention children and their innocence, everybody lends an ear. Everybody wants to be part of their better development. And I will tell you, I don't really like to do this, but I'll just mention it. The America now is pulling out of the Paris Agreement. The administration doesn't largely believe in climate change, which is okay for them. But for a long time, this was the standpoint of America. America had refused to ratify the Kyoto Protocol, the Bali Conference, all of these things. They refused to be a part of that conversation until there was a hurricane, I forget its name, that came and shut down Wall Street for 4 days. Then they said, wait a second, I think let's start to listen to this conversation. Then they came back into the picture after that hurricane. The floods and the hurricanes have been happening over the years. They used to happen every 100 years, every 20 years, every 50 years, every 10 or so years. But now they literally come almost every other 5 days. There's a hurricane. And we have gotten now so used to them, which is sad, that we now give them the names we give to our dear children. Oh, Hurricane Isaac, oh, Joshua, oh, Katrina, oh, because we have sadly accepted that they are part of the status quo. They are part of our everyday lives, which I think is sad, because what kind of inheritance are we going to give our children? At a certain point, I think it was in 2021, there were floods that ravaged the whole of Europe. I mean, Germany, Turkey, Istanbul, and that kind of thing. The wildfires used to be something that used to threaten the kangaroos in Australia. Then boom, LA, Hollywood, bam, fires. So the things that we thought were distant are moving a lot closer. And it is time to wake up and smell the coffee. And like I said at the start of this show, you don't have to do it because you believe in the science. Just do it for basic humanity, or if even basic common sense. I mean, it either makes sense not to litter. That's not about science. And people think that climate change is one whole big football that they just dump on you. No, it builds up over time. The effects come a lot later. Look at the air we breathe now. Literally almost every 5 children, one is walking with an inhaler. Every 5 children, one is working with an inhaler. I mean, if you look at our version of pollution, you think if the air is going to be polluted, I need to look up in the sky and it will be dark black. Then I know, oh, there is pollution. No, it simmers through. Look at the microplastics that we have. When you open a bottle, even the bottle tops, the minute pieces of plastic or metal or whatever it is that slip through, things that you will not see with an open eye, microscopic. They go into our drinks. We take them, we consume them, we get sicker. We need to revisit our approach to the life we have and the one that we want our children to inherit. So I think for me, it is. I told Andrea the other day that we need to think local actions with a global vision. Something that we do today may help to reduce an effect, or may provide a positive lesson for people in Singapore, may provide a positive lesson for people in America, in Canada, in Guatemala. I told someone the other day about the small island states. There are states that are literally in the next 5 years may face extinction because of the rising sea levels. And boom, they will get submerged. And it may be a country with just 50,000 people, but it is still a country with a human population that actually matters. So let's think outside the box, but most importantly, let's start by thinking the way they say charity begins at home. Let's just start with the basics. And that one, whether the deniers are there, whether they don't believe, it will make a small difference. And I think Mother Teresa once said that we may not all do great things in life, but we can do small things with great love. So if we can use that as a guiding principle, then hopefully the outlook of our planet may be a little bit different for the future generations.
Yeah. So, growing up in Australia, it's a hot country, just like Africa's hot, right? But our summer times we're outdoors running around as a Gen X. Come home when the lights go on at night on the street, that sort of thing. Nobody was watching us. The parents were working. We just did whatever the hell we want, and our creeks were clean, our rivers were clean, and the oceans were clean. And so every time I hear about, people who are fighting against change, I just keep thinking back to my children have never seen what I've seen. They didn't grow up being able to have an outdoor life, especially in the summer, because it's just too hot. Playgrounds, that you burn your hands if you touch the equipment, and all over the world, it's different for, the kids in Phoenix over the summertime in the US, the temperature on the ground is like 180 degrees. It's just crazy. So, I just wanted you to elaborate on the global perspective on this, because I think you've got a really great way of sort of positioning it, because you're not just looking at Uganda and you're not just making an impact there, you're making it right across East Africa, but it's more than that. Do you want to talk about, to the parents of the world,
I think,
give them some hope.
I think, like you've said, globally, you see, we have got the global north and the global south. And people in the global south pollute the least. But they suffer the biggest brunt of the effects of climate change. And sometimes in the global north, we tend to think, people say, that's, it's okay. I mean, I take out my trash, I separate my litter, my recyclables go out on Tuesday, and then the other ones go out the week after, so I am good. But there is nothing like good. Like if a fruit gets rotten on one side, the other side cannot be comfortable that, we're good. Mine is still fresh, because it will eventually eat across. Now, in the global north, I'll give you an example. We have what they call the Conference of Parties, the COP meetings that happen every year. And this year it is going to happen in Brazil, in Belém, in November. And when you go on, the government of Brazil has kind of made it literally impossible for very many people to be able to travel, because I think the average cheapest accommodation for a delegate going to Brazil is somewhere in the region of $270 to $300 a night. Now, how then can you go and have a meaningful conversation or discussion on the state of our climate when you're just going to be able to bring in just a few select people? How will people from Bangladesh, from Uganda, from Guatemala, from India, from wherever, come and sit in a 2-week conference where, first of all, they're going to spend a lot of money on accommodation, then the tickets, then there is survival and food and all that. It begs the question of, are we really looking for a solution?
Yeah.
And that is why, to me, I think it is very important for us to remind ourselves that individuals, private citizenry, can sometimes take on the challenges that we face as humanity without having to exclusively wait on and rely on global governments and global institutions to take the lead. That's why I say charity begins at home. So if you are in Germany or in Australia, wherever you are, whether it is a potted plant, whether it is recycling, you do your little bit within your means to make a difference for your children, your household, and the kind of inheritance they will have. Because there is an African saying that says, a wise old man plants a tree whose shade he knows he will never sit under. So that one would apply, whether you are in Africa or in India or in South America or wherever it is. We have to give hope, because that is the least that we can do. In a country like that big one where there is no belief in climate change, there is a pull out from the processes. You look at the humanitarian aid that has been cut off by trillions, the people that are suffering from malaria, from the effects of, I won't call it I try to stay clear of politics, but we are not going to dampen their spirits. Let's see how we can, as a human race, collectively try to do the few things within our means, the little things within our means. Like I've said, I gave an example earlier on where we have been taking some dustbins to schools. Now, in a better scenario, you would have taken them a blue one and a green one to be able to separate what is recyclable and what's not. But at least you can start from somewhere and say, rather than leave it all over the ground, let's put it in these dustbins. And the key thing is the lesson. Now, globally, most of the countries in the global north that have spent so many years polluting are pushing for an agenda of keeping fossil fuels in the ground, which is a very good thing at the moment. But you have countries that have just discovered oil. And in their view, they're saying this is the answer to our problems. We're going to sort out all our economic mess. We're going to pay our debts. We are going to improve the GDP of our countries. So how do you strike the balance? I've sat in meetings and I've had people talk about just transition. We need a just transition from the renewable energies. And I say, just transition is relative. A just transition in Southern Sudan is not the same as a just transition in Germany or in Italy or in India or in Pakistan, where people have in certain countries, we say, okay, let's now focus on solar energy or nuclear energy, because you can afford to do that. You can afford to have electric cars. So you can't have a uniform just transition across the board. I'll give you an example. In one of the northern parts of Uganda, it produces the best charcoal that they use to cook, because they get it from trees that are with hard oak that will endure. So it has a good quality, the burning and everything. Now, you find a gentleman that has been in the charcoal business of actually cutting trees and burning charcoal for 30 years. He has educated his children, raised families. He's probably Muslim, he's a Hajj, and he has 3 wives. And all of them, the children go to school, they have a well-being because of that business. Then there is another guy who transports the charcoal from 600 kilometers away and brings it into the city for sale and consumption. His name is Juma. And Juma has 2 wives as well. He has children that have gone to university, and he has educated them on this kind of business. Then there's a lady in the market who actually sells the charcoal. She has 8 children from 3 husbands, and all of them are in school. She has managed to put up a little house. You know, she's progressively moving because of this charcoal business. Then you come and say, listen, stop the charcoal. Charcoal burning is not good. It's bad for our trees. Let's go to briquettes. Now, how do you cater for that entire value chain, that the entire route from the person who cuts, the ones who burn, the ones who smell the charcoal, the ones who load it on the truck, the people who ferry it to the cities, and the actual ones who consume it? So if you are doing a just transition, how do you cater for that entire line of people? So that's why I say we need to rethink some of the things we bring in as solutions, because we need to ensure at the end of the day that you have resilient, sustainable communities. And to be able to do that is, how do I move you from the charcoal business, keep your family and children safe, they can eat, they can drink, they can go to school, and then also be able to balance the provision of taking care of the environment. I used to tell some policymakers that, you know what, people cut timber and then they transport it. Before you give anyone a license, can they show you a lot that they have planted? Because you know they are going to fell timber, but at least let them plant before you give them a license to do timber for furniture or for whatever cause it is. But that's a discussion that is a little bit broader. So I know when I talk about this, I could sometimes wander on, but we have to think what works for us in our localities, in our small places, whether it is in Brisbane, whether it is in Peru, whether it is in Milan or in Addis Ababa, what could work for me that will make an impact on the environment for me, for my children, and for future generations to come, and also keep the economy in check wherever you can. So how do we balance the need for economic development with raising sustainable, resilient communities, as well as taking care of the environment and climate change in general? So that's it.
I'm going to ask. I know that David will want to jump in, so I'm just going to bring him over.
I don't know if I should. I think if I just, I mean, I just want to say, by the way, that I had a trouble connecting to the website littlehandsgogreen.org.
Okay.
So
I'll look into it.
I got on it, and then the next time it denied me access, so I don't know what was going on.
So that's a good point, and I think it'd be great to be able to have a connection, a contact.
Yeah.
I found that you're on formerly Twitter. I don't really want to say, but anyway, that's just me.
Now I will share that, and also there's a YouTube channel called Little Ones Go Green. So, but it's the disparity of internet and its connectivity down this way. So
and I want to put one thing kind of across it in this way. I think this is an important thing. I think that there's conventional thinking, conventional wisdom about just how progress is made and all those things. And what you're talking about is to say, let's take off that jacket of conventional wisdom in that way. In fact, what you're saying is, under this jacket of conventional wisdom, we already have a better jacket. We just covered it up in that way. And that's really important, because yesterday a report came out. A report came out by BP, which is a oil and gas company, and is this Energy Outlook 2025. And in it pulled back on a anticipation last year out of its economic models of a peak to oil and gas use. And it said that's not going to happen. And the reason it said it's not going to happen is because of development in Africa, in emerging Asia, and those countries. And clearly you alluded to the countries which are discovering new sources of oil and gas in what you were talking about. But the reason it was making those comments is because there is a conventional wisdom, this jacket that we wear, about how development must go. And I was in Kenya a year and a half ago, and there the development is all about increasing the pollution in the cities, getting more traffic jams, creating more dust along in that way. And that's the image of development. If you're doing those things, then you are developing. And there's
very true, Biden.
It's not by accident. It's because there's a huge industry behind it from the wealthier countries, that they want new places where they can apply the development techniques they have had, because that's how they're geared up towards. And this is a huge opportunity. There is 1.5 billion people on the African continent that they can apply that to. And if they do that, they can continue on to maintain their position. So I think what I want to bring along is, I love this idea. And I think really important to that is this aspect that you suggest, which is don't prejudge the actions you might take as to what it may mean. There is a big mentality change, which is to take off this jacket of conventional wisdom, allow the other jacket, which is actually a better one, to come through, and actually really rethink what it means to be living in a better world for you. And I think that's an important start in that way. So I really love to connect with you. I've got a few ideas I really want to see. I had a book called A Book of Trees. And the idea of a book of trees is not to list the trees, is to list the stories of each tree. So
thank you.
All the people there, in your children, that they can each write a page with their tree and their stories.
And David, allow me just to interject. You see, what you have said there is, how can I put it? That there is the nail on the head. I mentioned to you, and I'm going to put it in the comments after this call. I'm going to put 2 pictures of the gentleman who came to see me when he came to see me when I was starting Little Ones Go in 2012. And I met him 3 days ago wearing a yellow shirt, campaigning for the president. There was a president's nomination, the president that's coming on, President Yoweri Museveni. And I looked at him and I said, oh my God, you're still alive. We bumped into each other on the street and we laughed and hugged and we took a picture and I saved it. But the point that I wanted to make, which brings in the issue you talked of the story, when we were going to launch Little Ones Go Green, we met a lady giving birth at the roadside. Now she was 10 kilometers away from the nearest health center and her waters broke. I think I have an amateur video as well. I'll find it and then I'll throw it in as well. I will give it to Andrea and then you can push it out just as a follow-up. But when he mentioned those stories and the trees and what they mean, and this lady, where we parked our cars, we were shocked, we saw people gathering, and she didn't ask us for a t-shirt or money or anything. Like they normally, when you see people from uptown, you ask them for something, or a little money or biscuits or sweets. And she just asked to plant a tree at the spot where she had given birth, so she would forever remember where her child was born. And so I asked him, how is that lady? He told me the child must be about 13 years old. So you can imagine, it was 2012. It's now 2025. The child is about 13 years old, but there is that spot where they gave birth from. So for me, every other story, and when I sometimes drive, I went to Rwanda the other day, and I said I want to go and check on my. Say you can't go to that place now. The first family now lives in that area and it has security. I said I don't give a rat's ass. So I went to the gates and said, listen, I want to enter there. I said, why? I said, see those trees there? I planted them here in 2017. So, and I said, they called whoever, and then I walked in and I saw the trees, and the excitement, because the trees have a story. I mean, I know what happened in 2017. I have little kids' pictures somewhere scattered of children they would put paint in a basin, then they put it on a tarpaulin, and then they put their thumbprints, and then they write on their names. Now, I can travel across the world in so many places, and I tell you stories of, there's a potted plant that I put in Oregon when I had gone for a public interest environmental law conference in 2015. Or there is this in Toronto, or there is this in Rwanda, or this in Ghana. So every tree has a story. And that's not just for me alone. Even the children, you meet a parent who is so excited. And I'll tell you this, when we're doing 10 years of Little Ones Go Green in 2022, I went to a gentleman who, at the time, I had coffee with him, and at the time he was the managing director of the electricity, distribution company. It was called Umeme. So whispered, I told him, you know what, we are doing 10 years and would really, really need a little bit of your support. So we can have a small function, at least for a few ambassadors. He called his head of public relations and said, can you prepare at least 10 million shillings for these guys? The guy said, I don't have a budget, but I can give 5 million. Said, okay, prepare the check, they will give it. I told him, oh my God, I am so happy, it's my lucky day. He told me, no, it's not. He told me in 2015, I walked to your function and I picked up 2 lemon seedlings and I planted them, and the doctors told me to stay off milk. I survive on lemon tea, and I survive on the lemons from the trees you gave me. Now that's testimony. It was accidental, but it's so those little stories, and I like what David said. It's you attach a conversation to vocal pause now.
So
I was just like, keep going. I think you need to read a book. You need to write a book about trees, like David was saying. But okay, if you're ready to talk again. So what I wanted to do is, because there's a lot of people who are here who don't really know what's going on in Africa. You know, and there's a lot of things, and it's a massive continent, and we've got extreme droughts in one end, we've got terrible famines, we've got floods, we've got, there's some terrible stuff going on. So I just wanted to get a sense. You're on the front line of climate change. What are you seeing? What's some of the worst you're seeing? What are some of the stupid decisions that are being made that are having an impact, like building in wetlands? Give us that perspective.
You see, and I think that is, I alluded to that earlier on when I said, how do you strike a balance between economic development, sustainability, and protection of the environment? Now, you have people, or you have policy decisions made across the global south, maybe in Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, India, whatever it is. And you sit down and realize that people need development. So what you then do is you find a gazetted wetland, you pour soil into it, then you construct something. Whether it is an industry, and the argument would be, oh, this industry will provide 3,000 jobs. Good, people need jobs. But what is the ripple effect? Because in his infinite wisdom, God created an ecosystem on the planet where a river has tributaries, there is a wetland and a peatland, and the water from here will balance off what will go in the other corner. It is, and I tell people, it is like the human body. The human body is built in such a way that if it gets too hot, I will sweat. The sweat glands will, God has designed that. And then if I eat bad food, I'll get a running stomach because I'll clear out whatever poisonous stuff that has gone inside me. So we have that kind of ecosystem. I eat so much, I have to go to the toilet. Then if something is choking me, I'll cough it out, that kind of thing. So that is how nature is on our planet. So if you build in a wetland, whatever you put there for whatever reason, there was a reason why God created the wetland. He knew where the land would be, where the wetland would be, and he created it. So if you decide to think that it is not necessary and you build in it, a few years later, this water is going to look for where it gets sucked into what would have been the wetland, and there is no place, then it finds itself on the shores. Sometimes that's why we have rising sea levels and rising water levels, and we don't understand that. The smart people in Dubai woke up one day and they started something called, out of technology, rainwater harvesting. I think they harvest cloud harvesting. I don't know the right term, but I think you're probably familiar with it. And I think it's either last year or must be either last year. They were massive floods. The heavens poured and Dubai flooded, simply because we had tampered with the status quo. You see, there is this.
I'm not convinced of that. That was a fact.
I think so. I mean, this is my view, because, and it's my view is not the right one. But for me, when I looked at what they have done it for a while, but like anything technology. You think we'll hit at T minus X minutes and then something goes wrong because it is not part of the original status quo. And by the way, this is not proven. It is my view. It is my personal view. And that's how I relate to tampering with certain things. So I thought to myself at the time, the clouds opened, the floods were massive. They did a bit of covering it up a little bit. And life went on. So I look at that. I look at floods coming up somewhere because the water is trying to find its path and it doesn't have it because of economic development. Someone has thought, let me put up an industry, let me grow rice in this wetland, let me do this, let me do that, let me cover it, let me put up a hotel. So I think to myself that in trying to balance our need for economic development and you know, develop, like David mentioned, if you drive through Nairobi and you see so many cars, then they say, you know, we are really developing because there's so many people, lots of traffic, you're just pumping it. But the cities were built for certain population, certain limits. So when you're going to increase either population or increase certain aspects of development, then you need to balance that. If you look at London or most of the European cities, their drainage systems and were done so many years ago. That's why I think we used to have a story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin, who once drove all the rats from London into the sewers and they disappeared. And you would read stories of Charles Dickens of the tunnels. Everything was purposely built at the time to cater for those, for the kind of development at the time. So for me, I think, and I'm not an expert, I'm just your average Joe, I think we need to rethink how we change our environment to under the guise and excuse of economic development and sustainability. We talked earlier on about discovery of oil. There is the ECOP pipeline that is being constructed across East Africa to transport crude oil all the way. And I see so many people doing protests about it. And people ask me, you're an environmentalist, what's your take on it? I say, you see, first of all, there is an environment management authority in each of these countries that did an environment impact assessment. And then they asked them, if we drill this oil and pull it out and put it in the ground and send it, what will happen? Oh, the environment will be impacted by this percentage and this percentage. And for me, I'm not even interested in the statistics. My view was, what if there is a spill? Just what if there is a spill? Like we have seen the spills from BP and the rest in the previous years.
Yeah.
Is the community ready for this? Is there a contingency? Let's forget about the drilling. Let's talk about what if there is a spill? How will these very poor communities where the pipeline is going through, will they be able to survive it? How will they manage? So for me, those are the kind of conversations I want even my fellow civil society people to do. Let's not just talk about stop ECOP, don't do this, don't do that. No, let's ask the pertinent questions. Yeah. What if? What is the contingency? What if? Because yes, you're saying economic development, beautiful. You said the percentage of emissions that will come out of this oil will be 0.0, beautiful. On paper looks good. Now let's go to the other side. What if?
Yeah.
Let's ask the questions of the what if, and if we get the appropriate answers, then maybe we can let economic development win. But yeah, so that's
I want
to
jump in if
I was just going to finish up with a couple of questions. You got a quick one, David?
Well, it's not so much a question; it's a comment that the question, Petrobar at the end of August, so very recently, a couple of weeks ago, basically performed the last stage of a environmental kind of licensing process to drill at the mouth of the Amazon River. Oh. And it finally gone that through. And the idea is it going to be able to cope with exactly the question that Joseph talks about, what it does is drill. So it's part of the environmental testing. So the whole process is geared towards actually saying, you give us a question, we'll answer it. You give us a question, we'll answer it. But the whole direction of it is still further development in those ways. There's still further steps in those ways. Because there's only one way to make money. And I want to talk with you maybe offline about this because I can go on forever. But there is a mechanism that Richard and I have been talking about, which is to create a money that is made by nature, which is made by nature being intact. You make it if you don't drill it, as opposed to you make it if you drill it. Now you have a choice. Now you can choose. Now government can choose between making the money by not exploring or making the money by exploring. Without that counterpoint, you're always going to step towards drilling.
Yeah.
Actually, Andrea, just before you come in and just to interject, and I have made this argument before in Azerbaijan at COP, and I said some of you countries have the global south countries and they owe you a lot, massive debt, and you are out there telling them, don't drill, don't do this, don't do that. And it is just like you are suggesting it to them. So I said, why don't you, in the spirit of communalism, what in Africa they call Pan-Africanism, say, you owe us $100 million. Keep your oil in the ground for the next 25 years, and we will forgive that $100 million debt. Mm-hmm. But because in the 25 years, this country that was supposed to drill oil will have found different technological advancements or solutions to do solar, to do nuclear, to do so many other things, and they will not even need the fossil fuels. Now, that needs to be an unselfish, uncapitalistic approach that needs to come from those countries that owe, where the countries in the global south owe them money. I mean, that needs to kind of be a better conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to take this one step further, which is where we go. If you go through the governments, you won't get it because the governments have their own agenda. So what our proposal does is actually go to the young people. And why the young people? Because young people and young professionals in the world, especially in the richer world, are standing at the point of inheriting something like $20 trillion over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Just think about what they can do if they want to. So this becomes their choice. Is the trees they plant. Now these trees are the giving nature a sovereign role. That's what it does. So I'm going to pull back from this. I'd love to talk more about it. I'd love to connect and have a chat. Again.
I think you two need to follow up. So you just said, Joseph, the global south owes the global north a lot of money, and it's kind of an ironic sort of statement because the global north has been extracting from the global south for hundreds of years and not paid their way. But anyway, but we've also had conversations about this from an economics point of view. So there's another angle. So you were recently appointed the regional director for climate change advisory for East Africa. Can you just share a little bit more about what that's about, and then just finished up with what's next for you, what keeps you hopeful? All right.
Okay. And that one is it's the realization that you have countries like Uganda that go and lobby for change policy and to make a difference. Then you have Rwanda, then you have Kenya, then you have Dar es Salaam, then you have Southern Sudan and Burundi across the board, the East African region. And the Little Ones Go Green story has been a story of successful positive advocacy. Because our advocacy is positive. It is positive activism, the one that goes into the grassroots. So that position is to try and see how I can help multiply and what should I call it? Amplify what we have been doing in Uganda across the entire East African region so we can lobby collectively. How do you drive climate change advocacy, not just in Uganda, but in Rwanda, in Kenya, and then take it to stakeholders on the global stage and say, listen, this is what we think we can be able to do in the East African region. We have done this, it has worked, we have piloted it. How can you help us support and grow it, from driving education projects, climate change education, to literacy, to inclusivity, bringing children living with disabilities into the fold, having a oneness about the integration of East Africa in the climate change discourse. So that is what this entails. And it is just a broader load on the shoulders, but a load that is now and be payable. But how do we help transform communities in different countries in the East African region and help them be able to follow the Little Ones Go Green story and create so many pockets of Little Ones Go Green in Rwanda, in Southern Sudan, in Kenya, in Tanzania? That is the long and short of it. And I am hopeful that we will keep doing this. And thanks to the shit show, my friends from the Climate Crisis Club, who are ever amazing in trying to churn out ideas and put voices out, will keep the voices of the children alive. And like I always say, a child's mind is like wet cement. Whatever you write on it remains permanent. Whatever we do in life, whether it's in economics or it's in business or it's in climate or it's in religion and faith, let us involve the children, the young ones, because when we are long gone tomorrow, they will pick up this mantle and move with it as we go along. I always say this, and I'll pick it up. There's a gentleman called William Golding. He was an amazing English author, and he wrote a book called Lord of the Flies. And in essence, it showed that man, I think, is inherently evil. He only tends to be tamed by the forces of civilization. That's why when these boys were marooned on an island, they turned into something else until they were later rescued. So while we're out there, let's use civilization to groom ourselves, to make us better, to make our children better. And our environment will always be our future, and our future will always be our own responsibility. It's not the responsibility of governments, of anybody, it is ours. So let us take it upon ourselves to make a difference to our environment. I am hopeful. And thank you for the shit show. Let's keep it going. And whatever promised, I'll drop in the YouTube link. I'll get our tech guys to look at the website so it's up and running. And David, I will drop you an email. And everybody else, Joe, that is not the Joseph. Pleasure to meet you all guys. And whenever you see one of the...
Are you going to stay on for a bit? Are you going to stay on for a bit?
Yeah, I'm going to stay on. I'm going to stay on.
Yeah, cool.
I'm going to grab a coffee, then I'll get back on. So, but I'm listening in. So you can keep in the background. I'll grab a quick coffee, but I'm with you. And I have enjoyed this. It's I like the thoughts. I like the views, and it shines perspective on things that we can do. And it's incumbent on us to do better, because if not for our own self, for our children and our grandchildren.
Yeah.
Adios, amigos.
All right.
See you soon.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. All right, I'll drop you.
Uncommon courage,